I secretly recorded my cheating partner and exposed them online. I never thought I would be the kind of person who would resort to such extreme measures. But life, as I had come to learn, had a way of forcing your hand. My name's Ella, and what I'm about to tell you is not easy to admit, but it's the truth. I'd been dating Chris for almost 2 years. To the outside world, we were the perfect couple. We went on vacations together, posted cute selfies on social media, and had our favorite spots in the city. He was charming, good-looking, and had a way of making everything seem effortless. People envied what we had. I envied what we had. Or I thought I did. There were always little things: unexplained absences, late nights at work, and the occasional slip-up in his stories. But I convinced myself it was nothing. After all, I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? I loved him. And that's what you do when you love someone. You trust them, right? But that trust started to fray when I began noticing changes in him. He was more distant, and there were nights when he'd just be too tired for anything. I wasn't blind. Something was off, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The tipping point came one Friday night when I had planned a surprise dinner for us. I had been preparing for days. I wanted to show him how much I cared, how much I appreciated him. When I arrived at our apartment, there was no sign of Chris. His shoes were neatly placed by the door. His jacket still hung in the hallway, but he was nowhere to be found. I texted him, expecting a quick reply, but nothing. I called, and it went straight to voicemail. I waited for a while before deciding to check his car. It was parked outside. Odd, because he always parked in the garage when he came home late. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. A pair of unfamiliar shoes were lying on the floor of the hallway near the front door. Not just any shoes. These were the kind of shoes a woman might wear to impress someone. My mind raced. I opened the door to his bedroom, hoping to find some kind of explanation. What I found instead was Chris, in bed with someone else. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. There was no mistaking it. He was with her, and they weren't just talking. The scene was unmistakably intimate. She looked up and saw me first. Her eyes widened, but it was Chris's reaction that hit me like a punch to the gut. He didn't apologize, didn't even look guilty. Instead, he stared at me blankly, as if he hadn't been caught in the most obvious way possible. "Ella, I can explain," he stammered, scrambling to cover himself. But there was no explanation that could make sense of what I was seeing. He was supposed to be my partner, my best friend. And here he was, tangled up in a lie, breaking the one thing that had kept us together for so long. I turned on my heel and walked out of the apartment without another word. I didn't cry. Not then. I felt numb, almost as if my body couldn't process the betrayal. But as I sat in my car, staring at the headlights of other cars driving by, something inside me snapped. I'd been humiliated. And I knew I couldn't just let this go. Not when he thought he could get away with it. Not when he thought I was some fool who didn't deserve the truth. So I did what anyone would do in the age of social media. I pulled out my phone. At first, I wasn't sure what to do. I could have blocked him, walked away, tried to forget. But I didn't want to forget. I wanted him to remember this. I wanted the world to see who he really was. I knew I couldn't just expose him for the cheating jerk he was to his friends or to our mutual acquaintances. They'd just take his side, make excuses, or worse, pretend it never happened. But online? That was different. I set up a private account on a platform I knew he used regularly. It took only minutes to gather the evidence. I had it all: the video footage from our front door camera, his messages to her, even pictures of their private moments from his phone, which, yes, I accessed while he was at work one day. It was all there. Irrefutable. With trembling hands, I uploaded everything. The caption I wrote wasn't dramatic. I didn't need to add any theatrics to make my point clear. This is what betrayal looks like, to the man I thought I knew. I hit post. And just like that, I let the world see who Chris really was. The relief I felt was almost instantaneous, though I wasn't sure whether it was the satisfaction of exposing him or the release from the weight of the secret I had been holding on to for so long. Either way, I wasn't done yet. The worst part of all of this hadn't even happened yet, but for now, I had done what I needed to do. The next few hours felt like an eternity. I sat in my car outside my apartment, staring at the screen of my phone, watching the views and comments flood in. It was surreal. I hadn't expected it to blow up this quickly. The notifications came in so fast that I had to turn off the sound. My post had gone viral. People I didn't even know were sharing it, commenting on it, tagging their friends. It was overwhelming, and yet, it was oddly empowering. I'd taken back control of the situation, something I thought I'd lost when I found Chris with another woman. The first message I got was from my best friend, Lauren. "Ella, what the hell is going on? Is this real?" I didn't even bother responding with words. I just sent her the link to the post. The next thing I knew, she was calling me. I picked up immediately. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "I will be," I replied, trying to steady my breathing. "But Chris, he's gone too far. I had to do this. I had to show everyone who he really is." Lauren was silent for a moment, processing everything. "You've been through a lot with him. I know you loved him, but Ella, you deserve better than this. You know that, right?" "I do now," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's just, everything about him was a lie. I can't believe I never saw it." She sighed. "You couldn't have known. He was careful. But now? Now you've got nothing to lose." I nodded, although she couldn't see me. "I want him to feel the consequences. I want him to feel how I felt. I want him to know that what he did isn't just going to go away." Lauren was quiet for a moment before speaking again. "Just be careful, okay? People can be really cruel online, and once it's out there, there's no taking it back." She wasn't wrong, but the thought of him walking away unscathed after everything he'd put me through, it felt impossible. The next few hours were a blur of messages. Most of them were from people I barely knew. Some were supportive, others were judgmental. Some called me brave, while others told me I was going too far. But the ones that hurt the most came from Chris's friends and family. "Ella, what the hell is this?" Chris's best friend, Mark, messaged me. "You're making a huge mistake. This will ruin him." I didn't respond to him. I didn't need to. Mark had always been in Chris's corner, and I wasn't about to explain myself to someone who clearly had no idea what it felt like to be betrayed. Then came the message I had been dreading. "Chris." It came late that night, just as I was about to close my eyes. The screen lit up and my heart skipped a beat as I saw his name pop up on my notifications. His message was simple, but the weight of it hit me like a ton of bricks. "We need to talk. This isn't what you think." My hands trembled as I typed back. "What's there to talk about, Chris?" I saw it with my own eyes. There was no response for a while. I stared at the screen, waiting for him to say something. Anything. The silence was maddening. Finally, after what felt like hours, his reply came through. "I didn't mean for it to happen. You've got to believe me. I love you, Ella. I never wanted to hurt you." I almost laughed. Almost. But the anger I felt simmered beneath the surface, and it was too raw to ignore. "You love me? Then why the hell were you in bed with someone else? Do you honestly think I'm that stupid?" His response came quickly this time, almost too quickly. "I made a mistake, a stupid mistake. But we can work through this. We can fix this. Just, let's talk. Please." I stared at the message, heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to yell at him, to tell him how much he'd hurt me, to remind him that he'd crossed a line I couldn't unsee. But a part of me was still holding on to the idea of him, the Chris I thought I knew, the one who was supposed to be loyal, kind, and trustworthy. But the truth was that Chris didn't exist anymore. I didn't reply. Instead, I went back to the post and watched the comments roll in. It wasn't long before I saw one that made me pause. It was a comment from a woman named Lucy. "I've been seeing Chris for a few months now. He told me you were just a phase, that he wasn't happy. I had no idea he was still with you. I'm so sorry you had to find out like this." My breath caught in my throat. I read the comment over and over, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. This wasn't just an affair. This was something much deeper. He'd been seeing her for months. And here I was, thinking I was the one who had been lied to. I suddenly felt a surge of anger. But it wasn't just at Chris anymore. It was at myself, too. How could I have been so blind? The next morning, I posted an update. "To everyone who's been supporting me, thank you. To those who think this is just a mistake that can be fixed, you don't know what you're talking about. Chris has been lying to me for months. He's been seeing someone else, and he's not the person I thought he was. I'm done pretending." I hit post and immediately felt a strange sense of relief. I wasn't going to keep his secrets anymore. I wasn't going to let anyone tell me I was overreacting or that I should give him another chance. The truth was out there now, and there was no going back. But as I closed my phone and tried to get some rest, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The following days felt like a whirlwind. I couldn't escape the constant notifications from my phone. Every time I checked, there was something new. Messages, comments, and shares. It seemed like everyone had an opinion, but no one knew the full story. No one except me. Chris didn't try to contact me again after that final message. He must have realized I wasn't going to give him a chance to explain himself. His silence spoke volumes, but as much as I wanted to believe it was over, there was a part of me that wasn't ready for the fallout. I'd exposed his lie, but I wasn't prepared for what would come next. I was at work when things really started to escalate. I had been quietly going about my day, trying to focus on my tasks, when Lauren texted me. "Ella, are you okay? Check Twitter." I opened the app, and there it was, Chris's response. He'd posted a video. I pressed play, and my stomach twisted as I watched his face appear on screen. His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot, and his voice, though calm, sounded like it was shaking just beneath the surface. He looked like a man who had been caught in his own lies and was trying to salvage whatever he could. "I know people have seen what Ella posted," he began, his voice low and regretful. "And I know I messed up. I made a huge mistake, but I'm asking for forgiveness. The truth is, yes, I was seeing someone else. But it wasn't what you think. Ella and I had been struggling for months. We'd grown apart. I didn't feel loved anymore. I wasn't happy. And I made a terrible decision. A decision I will regret for the rest of my life." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was trying to make it sound like I had driven him to cheat, like I was the one who'd failed him, and that his betrayal was somehow justified. "Ella, if you see this, please know I never meant to hurt you. I was wrong. But I still love you. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. Please give me a chance to explain in person." I sat there, stunned. Was this really happening? Was he trying to spin this around on me? It didn't matter that he was sorry now. He'd already broken everything we had. My phone buzzed again, and I saw more messages flooding in. People who had seen the video were taking sides. His friends were calling me vindictive and petty. They said I was destroying his life, and that the whole thing had been a misunderstanding. Some even accused me of trying to ruin his reputation out of jealousy. My blood boiled. I wasn't the one who had lied to everyone. I wasn't the one who had broken promises. And yet, somehow I was the villain in their eyes. It hurt more than I could put into words. But I wasn't going to let them twist the truth. I wasn't going to sit back and let them shame me into silence. I posted a response. "It's cute that he's trying to make this about his feelings. But here's the truth. Chris lied. He lied to me. He lied to everyone. He was seeing someone else behind my back for months. You can try to spin it however you want, but the reality is that he never respected me enough to be honest with me. This isn't about forgiveness. This is about moving on from someone who never had my best interest at heart. As soon as I posted it, I knew the storm was about to get worse. And it did. Chris's video was everywhere now. People were screenshotting his words, quoting him, and circulating it among their friends. My inbox was flooded with hateful messages. People I'd known for years were turning on me, calling me a liar, saying I was out to destroy him. But there were also people, strangers mostly, who sent me messages of support. Some told me they'd been through something similar. Others just told me they admired my strength. One message stood out in particular. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. I went through something similar with my ex. He tried to make me look like the bad guy too. But trust me, the truth always comes out in the end." That message gave me the strength I needed to keep going. I knew I wasn't the only one who had been hurt. I wasn't the only one who had trusted someone who turned out to be someone else entirely. It was late that evening when Chris finally showed up at my door. I wasn't expecting it, but I wasn't exactly surprised either. His knock was tentative, unsure. The same knock he'd always used when he was trying to convince me of something. Of anything, really. I opened the door, and there he was, standing in front of me. He looked different somehow. Smaller, like the weight of everything was finally catching up to him. He wasn't the confident, charming Chris I had fallen for. Now, he was just a man who had betrayed the person who had loved him unconditionally. "Ella?" His voice was strained. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside and led him into the living room. I wasn't going to make it easy for him, but I was done pretending like I didn't care. He sat down on the couch and I stood in front of him, arms crossed. "I don't know what to say," he began. "I messed up, I know I did. But this isn't who I am, Ella. I never wanted to hurt you." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because you've been hurting me for months. This is who you are, Chris. The man I loved? He doesn't exist anymore. You made your choice." "I didn't want to lose you," he said, his eyes pleading. "I thought if I could just keep everything under control, we could fix it later. But I was wrong. I should have been honest with you." I shook my head, disappointed. "It's too late for honesty now." He stood up, taking a step closer. "Please don't do this. Don't shut me out. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I felt the tears welling up, but I pushed them back. "I'm done, Chris. I don't need your apology. I need you to leave. This, us, it's over." He didn't argue. He didn't try to convince me further. He just stood there for a moment, defeated, before turning and walking out the door. As I watched him leave, a strange sense of finality washed over me. It was over. And despite everything, I was going to be okay. The days after Chris left felt like both a relief and a weight lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I had space to breathe. The noise of the internet, the overwhelming flood of opinions, and the constant messages started to die down. The world had moved on, at least for the most part. But I hadn't. I was still carrying the emotional scars from the last few weeks. I spent the next couple of days in quiet reflection, focusing on myself. I took long walks around the city, stopped by my favorite coffee shops, and began to rediscover the parts of me I'd lost while I was caught up in Chris's world. But even though the storm had calmed, there was something gnawing at me. Something I couldn't ignore. Chris's friends, his family, they weren't going to just let this go. His image, the one he had so carefully crafted, was shattered. And they were angry. I knew they were. But what I didn't expect was for it to escalate the way it did. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, I got a call from Lauren. Her voice was urgent, her words tumbling over each other. "Ella, you need to check your email. Now." "Lauren, what is it?" I asked, the knot in my stomach tightening. "I don't know how to explain it. Just check it." I opened my inbox and there it was, a series of threatening emails, all from different addresses, but they all had one thing in common. They were filled with venomous, hateful words. Most of them were vague, just angry rants accusing me of ruining Chris's life. But one email stood out above the rest. It had a subject line that made my blood run cold. "You'll regret this." I clicked on it, and the message inside was simple but chilling. "You think you're winning. You think you've exposed the truth. But you have no idea what you've started. Chris is not the only one who can hurt you. We'll make sure your life is destroyed, just like you've tried to destroy his." I read the message over and over, my mind spinning. It was a threat, no question about it. But who was behind it? Was it one of Chris's friends? One of his family members? I had no way of knowing for sure. Lauren's voice broke through my thoughts again. "Ella, you okay? Did you see the email?" "I saw it," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But who would do this? Why would they threaten me like this?" "I don't know," she said quietly, "but I don't like it. Be careful. You have no idea how far these people are willing to go to protect Chris." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. A part of me wanted to go to the police, but I knew it wouldn't do much. No one could prove anything. All I had were the emails, and they could be written by anyone. Still, the fear gnawed at me. What if they actually followed through on their threats? I decided to be smart. I changed all of my passwords, tightened my privacy settings on social media, and made sure that I had extra security on my phone and email accounts. I even asked Lauren to stay over that night, just in case. The next few days were tense. I stayed alert, constantly checking my surroundings whenever I left my apartment. It felt paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. It wasn't just the threats in the email. It was the sense of unease that followed me everywhere I went. The feeling that the quiet was only the calm before the storm. And then it happened. It was a Saturday afternoon when I saw the first sign of something truly sinister. I was at the grocery store picking up some things for dinner when I heard the familiar sound of someone calling my name. "Ella." I turned, my heart racing. It was Chris's sister, Amy. She had always been sweet to me, always supportive of our relationship. But now, her face was twisted with anger. Her eyes, usually warm, were cold and accusing. "You're making a mistake," she snapped as she approached me. "You think you've won, but you've just made everything worse. You've ruined our family." "Amy, what are you talking about?" I said, trying to remain calm. "You don't get it, do you? Chris is a mess because of you. You've turned everyone against him. And now you're trying to destroy his career, his reputation. You'll regret this. I swear." Her words cut through me like a knife. I hadn't even considered the impact on his family, though I probably should have. But the way she said it, like I was the villain in all of this, made my stomach churn. "Amy, I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. But Chris lied to me, and I deserve better than being treated like this. I don't owe him anything." She shook her head in disbelief, her hands clenched into fists. "You don't understand. He's not perfect, okay? But he's our brother, and you've humiliated him in front of everyone. We won't forget what you did." Before I could respond, she turned on her heel and walked away, leaving me standing there in the aisle feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. I stood there for a few moments, trying to collect myself, but the weight of her words kept pressing down on me. "You've ruined our family." But the truth was, I hadn't ruined anything. Chris had ruined everything. He had made the choice to cheat, to lie, to betray my trust. I had only reacted. But as I stood there trying to make sense of what Amy had said, it hit me. Chris wasn't just the one who had betrayed me. His family had been complicit in the lie, too. They had turned a blind eye to his behavior, defended him when I had questions, and now they were turning against me, too. It wasn't just Chris who needed to be exposed. It was everyone who had covered for him, everyone who had helped him keep his secrets. I wasn't done yet. I was going to make sure that the whole world knew exactly who Chris and his family really were. If they thought they could scare me into backing down, they were wrong. I had nothing to lose anymore. The days following my encounter with Amy were some of the most intense of my life. I couldn't shake the feeling that the tension around me was only growing. I was no longer just dealing with a cheater. I was dealing with an entire family that had shielded him, protected him, and now they were coming after me. Amy's words echoed in my mind. "You've ruined our family." But I couldn't help but feel like they had ruined themselves long before I came into the picture. They had all known about Chris's lies, his infidelities, and his deceit. I was the one who had been left in the dark. But the reality of the situation settled in when I found out something that made my blood run cold. It was a Wednesday morning when I received an unexpected email. This time, it wasn't from an anonymous source. It was from someone I recognized. Chris's mother. "Ella, you don't know what you're doing. You're tearing this family apart. Chris made mistakes, but he's trying to fix them. We all make mistakes. Please stop this before it's too late. Don't make me take legal action against you." I stared at the message, barely able to process it. Legal action? I quickly scrolled down to the bottom of the email, where she had included a link to a lawyer's website. The threat was unmistakable. She was not just upset with me, she was trying to intimidate me into backing down. I took a deep breath, fighting back the wave of panic that threatened to overtake me. I wasn't going to let this family push me around. They thought that a legal threat would scare me, but it only made me more determined. I responded quickly, refusing to let them control the narrative. "Your son made a choice. He cheated on me, and I found out. He lied to me for months, and I chose to expose the truth. If your family feels uncomfortable with that, then maybe they should take a hard look at his actions, not mine. I'm not backing down. Not now, not ever." I hit send, my heart pounding. I knew there was a risk involved in standing my ground, but I had come too far to let them manipulate me into silence. The following days felt like a constant game of cat and mouse. Chris's family wasn't letting up, and neither was I. Every time I checked my email or social media, I found more hateful messages, more threats. They even started reaching out to mutual friends, trying to get them to convince me to remove my post and move on. But I wasn't going to be silenced. Not now. Not ever. Then, on a Friday night, something unexpected happened. I was sitting on my couch scrolling through my phone when I saw a notification pop up. Chris had posted again. I clicked on it immediately, and my heart skipped a beat. It was another video, but this time it was different. His face looked more desperate, more raw than I'd ever seen it before. He wasn't hiding behind a polished persona anymore. This was a man who had lost control. "Ella," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've betrayed you. But I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to make things right. I'm begging you to give me the opportunity to prove that I can change." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. They sounded so sincere, so full of regret, but I couldn't forget everything he had done to me. I couldn't ignore the pain that had been building for months, the trust that had been shattered in an instant. "You think I'm the villain in this story?" Chris continued. "But I swear to you, I was never trying to hurt you. I was just lost. Please don't let this be the end of us. Please." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could feel the familiar tug in my chest, the part of me that still cared for him, that still wanted to believe in the man he used to be. But the other part of me, the stronger part, was telling me to walk away, to move on from someone who had proven time and time again that he wasn't worth my love. Before I could even process my thoughts, another notification appeared. This time it was from Lucy, the woman Chris had been seeing behind my back. "Ella," the message began. "I don't know how to explain this, but I feel awful. Chris told me you two were over, that he hadn't been happy for a long time. But I see now that everything he told me was a lie. I had no idea about you or what was going on between you two. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you existed. I stared at the message, my stomach dropping. How could Chris do this to me? Not only had he cheated on me, but he had lied to this woman too. He had convinced her that I was just a past chapter, that I wasn't a part of his present. He had manipulated her just like he had manipulated me. I felt a strange sense of powerlessness at first, but then I realized something. It wasn't just my story. It wasn't just Chris who needed to be held accountable. Lucy deserved to know the truth too. I responded to her immediately. Thank you for reaching out. I don't blame you for what happened. Chris deceived both of us. I just want you to know that everything he told you was a lie. You deserve better than that. The next morning, I woke up to see that Chris had posted yet another video, this time apologizing to Lucy as well. He seemed desperate to repair everything, but it was too little, too late. He had already exposed his true nature. The lies, the cheating, the manipulation, it was all out in the open now. I didn't need him to beg me for forgiveness. I didn't need him to apologize to me or anyone else. What I needed was closure, and I was getting it. As I sat there, reading the comments flooding in, I realized something. This was no longer just about Chris. It was about me. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, and my future. I had taken control of the narrative, and no one, not even Chris, could take that away from me. I was done being a victim. I was done being afraid. I had exposed the truth. And now, it was time to move on. The silence that followed Chris's final desperate video was almost deafening. For days, it felt like the entire world had held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. And then, nothing. The storm had passed. I sat on my couch one evening, looking out the window as the soft golden light of the setting sun painted everything in warm hues. It was strange how life felt so normal again after everything that had happened. The social media buzz had slowed to a crawl, and the message notifications had mostly stopped. Some people reached out in support, while others remained silent, unsure of what to say. But the most important thing? I felt like I had finally regained control. As the days went on, I took time for myself. I focused on healing, processing everything I'd been through, and surrounding myself with people who actually cared about me. Lauren was a rock during all of this. She checked in with me daily, brought over takeout when I didn't feel like cooking, and just let me vent when I needed to. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like I could move forward. I kept thinking about Chris. Was I angry? Yes. Was I hurt? Absolutely. But I was also starting to feel something else, something deeper. I felt a sense of gratitude for what had happened, even if it had been painful. I had learned so much about myself in the process. I learned how strong I truly was, how much I was willing to fight for my happiness, and how important it was to trust my instincts. A few weeks after Chris's final video, I received a message from Lucy. Ella, I just wanted to thank you for being kind to me. I know it wasn't easy, but I appreciate that you reached out. I had no idea about you. Chris made me believe all these lies, and it hurts knowing I was a part of that. The message didn't sting anymore. In fact, it felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I realized that I wasn't the only one who had been hurt by Chris's lies. Lucy had been just as manipulated as I had been. I responded quickly. You don't owe me anything, Lucy. Chris is the one who needs to answer for everything. But if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. She responded with a heartfelt thank you, and for the first time, I felt a sense of peace. There was no more anger, no more resentment. Just a quiet understanding that sometimes the most painful lessons can lead to the most beautiful growth. But life had a way of throwing curveballs. As much as I had moved on, there was still one more thing that I needed to deal with: the fallout from Chris's family. I hadn't heard from them in a while, and I thought maybe they had finally accepted the reality of the situation. But one afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? I answered, a little wary. Ella? It was Amy. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "I know we've had our differences, but I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to tell her to go away, to leave me out of this mess. But there was another part of me, one that wanted closure, wanted to understand how things had gone so wrong. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my apartment. When I arrived, Amy was already sitting at a table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. She looked tired, her eyes rimmed with red, like she hadn't been sleeping. As I sat down across from her, I couldn't help but notice how much smaller she seemed. The woman who had confronted me at the grocery store was gone. In her place was someone who looked like she had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Ella," she began, her voice unsteady. "I know I've said some things, and I don't know how to make up for it. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I want to apologize. You didn't deserve any of this." I stared at her for a long moment, processing her words. Why now? Why after everything? "I don't know," she admitted. "I think I was just so angry and upset that I didn't want to see the truth. I defended Chris because he's my brother, but I realized that doesn't make what he did right. And I'm sorry for how I treated you. You didn't deserve the blame I put on you." I let out a breath, feeling the weight in my chest begin to ease. It wasn't an apology I had expected, but it was one I needed. Amy had been so wrapped up in protecting her family that she hadn't seen the hurt they were causing. But now she was taking responsibility for her actions. "Thank you," I said softly, my voice barely a whisper. "It means a lot to me." For a moment, we both just sat there in silence, letting the weight of the conversation settle. Finally, Amy spoke again. "I can't change what happened, Ella, but I want you to know I see you now. And I see the strength you have. You don't have to forgive me, but I hope you can move on. You deserve happiness." I smiled at her, the first genuine smile I'd had in weeks. I am moving on. I already have. The meeting wasn't about forgiveness, and it wasn't about trying to repair the unrepairable. It was just about understanding, about both of us coming to terms with what had happened. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. The chapter with Chris and his family was finally closing. And with that, I realized something else. I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. I had faced betrayal, manipulation, and countless threats, but I had come out the other side, not as a victim, but as someone who had taken control of her own story. The truth had set me free. And now it was time to focus on the future. My future. The days after my meeting with Amy were peaceful, almost too peaceful. Life had started to feel normal again. I was moving forward, taking care of myself, and focusing on my career. But just as I thought the storm had passed, the calm was shattered by a single message that appeared in my inbox. It was from an unfamiliar email address, one I hadn't seen before. "You think it's over? You have no idea what you've started." My heart skipped a beat. I didn't recognize the name attached to the email, but something about it felt ominous, like a shadow waiting to pounce. I clicked open the message, my hands shaking. "You ruined my son's life. You exposed him to the world, and you think you've won. But you've forgotten something important. You're not the only one with power. You're not the only one who can destroy." The message sent a chill down my spine. The anger was palpable, the threats unmistakable. My mind raced. Who was this? What were they talking about? I quickly scrolled down to the end of the email. And then, my blood ran cold. There was an attachment. I clicked on it. It was a video. The screen flickered to life, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. It was a recording of me sitting at my desk, scrolling through my phone, just like I had done countless times before. But the way the video was shot, it was taken from the window across from my apartment. My eyes widened in horror. They've been watching me. The video zoomed in on my face, showing me at my most vulnerable. The person behind the camera had been so close, so silent in their surveillance that I hadn't even realized. The screen flickered again, and suddenly I heard a voice. You think you're safe now? You think your secrets are safe? We know where you are. We know what you've done, and now everyone will know what you are hiding. The camera pulled back, and for a split second, I saw a figure standing in the shadows. Someone tall, someone familiar. My heart dropped into my stomach. The figure stepped forward, and the camera focused on their face. It was Chris. Chris. I felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath me. He had been watching me. All this time. He had never really left. Chris. I whispered aloud to no one, my voice trembling with disbelief. I had thought he was out of my life for good. But there he was, still pulling the strings, still lurking in the background like a dark shadow, waiting to strike. The video abruptly cut off. I was frozen, unable to move. The cold, suffocating fear gripped me as I stared at the screen, knowing that Chris wasn't done yet. He had made a choice. And that choice, his obsession with controlling everything, had led him down a path that would destroy both of us. I wasn't just dealing with someone who had cheated on me. I was dealing with someone who had a vendetta, a person who wouldn't rest until he had ruined everything in his path. But I wasn't going to let him win. As the minutes passed, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't fear anymore. It was rage. He thought he could control the narrative, that he could make me his victim again. But this time, I was the one with the power. I was the one who had the truth, the one who had fought to expose it. And I would not let him take that from me. I opened my phone, my fingers moving quickly across the screen. I pulled up the video file I had of Chris. His confession, the one that had started it all. The one I had hidden in the deepest folder of my phone, just in case. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I uploaded it. I posted it online, just like I had posted everything else. But this time, I didn't just expose his lies. I exposed his manipulation, his control. I exposed him for the monster he had become, for the man who refused to let go. I showed the world who he really was. Within minutes, the reactions flooded in. People were shocked, disgusted, heartbroken. And as I watched the comments pour in, the messages from strangers and even friends, I realized that I was finally, truly free. But even as the world watched, as the walls closed in on Chris, I knew one thing for sure. This was far from over. I had made my move, but Chris was unpredictable, dangerous. His obsession with me hadn't ended. He would come for me again, and I would have to be ready. I stood up, feeling a surge of strength. This was no longer just about exposing the truth. It was about survival. And I had learned the hard way that sometimes the only way to truly be free was to fight like hell. The game had just shifted, and I was ready for whatever came next.